Good evening, everyone. We left off on page 91. Chapter 6. Kerry was at the crime lab at exactly 0500 the next morning. She had gotten some sleep, but it had been plagued with a horrible dream. She had called Greg on the way in, just to make sure Kyle and Amber were safe. When she got in, her team was already there, and they were all drinking coffee. Also there was a man dressed in a suit, whom Kerry could only assume was Agent Anderson from the FBI. She greeted them all and shook hands with Anderson. Lieutenant Kerry O'Malley. Special Agent Cory Anderson, he introduced himself. Your CSIs were just briefing me on everything. Good, so take me through everything you know, she requested. Anderson dove into his summary. He knew about the fact that Derek had been forced to build the bomb, and that the Diablo were planning to sell it to Tejada for a hefty sum. He knew about Derek's attempt to blow up his house, and about the USB his son Kyle had been given beforehand. He knew about the agreement between the Warrens and the Wilkes, and that the Wilkes would take Kyle and keep him hidden. He also understood that there was an attempted kidnapping, but didn't have all the details as to what the purpose was. We're still not sure why they took a blood sample from Kyle, Kerry explained. Leaving him in a highly populated area, knowing that an Amber Alert had been sounded, was bound to let him be found safely. Kyle wasn't harmed and was given somewhat comfortable conditions throughout the night. The Diablo has been known to scare people into silence, but they're usually not as gentle as they were with Kyle when they want to send a message. It seems that whatever their purpose was, it centers around that blood sample. And Kyle and Amber are both in a witness room right now, guarded and playing a video game, Greg added. They were fine last night. We had popcorn and played Pac-Man. You have Pac-Man in your apartment? Nikki asked him with a smirk. Kerry quickly changed the subject. So what else do you know, Agent? FBI intelligence tells us that Tejada is planning a domestic attack. He's got sleeper cells, probably in California and New York, and he's ready to strike both. What's he planning to do? It has something to do with explosives. This bomb of Mr. Warren's seems to point to an explosive that can be carried, and with a shield mechanism, it's likely that he's planning to attack specified locations. I thought terrorists preferred to kill as many people as possible, Sarah said. They generally do, but this seems to be a bit more directed. Our intelligence indicates he wants to bomb government agencies in California and New York. Why not D.C.? Justin asked. That's the other point I was about to make, Anderson said. His people are planning something in D.C., but it doesn't have to do with this bomb. It has to do with bioweapons deployed with a rocket that happen to have the same propellant as the bomb's combination. Kerry exhaled and then nodded. All right, she said. We do need the FBI's assistance. As much as she hated to admit that she couldn't handle something, this was way too extended for her local group. We'll handle Chicago. You handle D.C., California, and New York. That's the plan, Anderson said. I'm here to coordinate with you. Kerry nodded. So you've confirmed he still has the plans for the bomb even though Kyle had the USB? Yes, Anderson said with a nod. And he's probably built quite a few of them by now. The Diablo aren't going to be happy with him or you. They just lost out on about $1 billion because of the fact that Tejada managed to get the plans for the bomb without going through them. How did Tejada get the plans without the Diablo? Kerry asked, hoping Anderson had some intelligence the CSI office didn't. We picked up illegal internet activity not too long ago. When you stopped Mr. Warren from blowing up his house, and the Diablo didn't check in on time after acquiring the bomb from Warren, Tejada was alerted to this miss in the deadline. And so he used some of his resources and was able to tap into Warren's computer before your CSIs examined it. He got the plans, thanks to the fact that Warren didn't get to detonate the bomb. Kerry understood now. Why weren't we informed of this sooner? She asked, getting annoyed. I wasn't told to inform you. I honestly don't know. It would have helped, Kerry said grimly, but then shook her head. But moving on, we need to try to find Tejada. Our Washington office is working on it, Anderson said. I think what would be best is if you handled the Diablo in Chicago and we handled Tejada. The Diablo are especially dangerous internationally in this case, but Tejada is actively planning a terrorist attack, and that's beyond your office's responsibility. We're counting on Chicago CSI, though, to keep the Diablo from getting their hands on it as well, or we'll have a war in the streets to contend with. Kerry agreed. All right, we'll follow our leads on the Diablo. We'll keep you updated on what we're doing. Feel free to help or coordinate with CSIs Finch and McAllister for information on Tejada. Justin and Nikki nodded, and Anderson acknowledged that he would be glad to work with them. Mr. Banning, Miss Lee, I want both of you working on Diablo internet activity. See if you can get any more leads. I'm going to talk to Mr. Warren about the capabilities of his bomb, and then do some testing in the explosives lab." The group nodded and departed to their tasks. Next scene. "Mamma mia! Los niños necesitan correr al coche y van a la escuela. Vámonos! Prego, prego!" Connor said enthusiastically, purposely mixing Italian and Spanish just to make Patrick and Aiden laugh. Having eaten breakfast and gotten dressed for school, they had their backpacks on and ran down the stairs, ready to go to school. They piled into the car, and Connor got behind the wheel, pulled out of the garage, and set the security alarm before pulling away from the house. "How cool would it be if we could hover?" he asked the boys in the back seat once they had buckled up. "That would be so cool," Aiden said. "Can we?" Patrick asked. "Mum's car can hover." "We can't, unfortunately. This car doesn't have a hovering mechanism in it. It isn't an emergency vehicle, or a Ferrari, or a limo." Patrick frowned. "I thought they could all hover." "Sorry, buddy," he said with a small smile as he pulled away from the house. Truth be told, the car could hover in extreme emergencies, but it took almost all the memory on the computer, and it would have fried the transmission. It was just meant for accident avoidance, and was completely computer-controlled. If the computer sensed a collision was imminent, it would override the manual controls and hover instantly. Then it would fry and drop the car to the ground a few meters from the collision range, and then Connor would call a tow truck. After a moment of silence, Connor asked them, "Have either of you heard of the multiple universe theory?" The boys shook their head. "Well," he said as he turned onto a main road, "the multiple universe theory says that for every possibility, every single thing that could possibly ever happen, a universe is created. It's called a parallel universe, since it's so very similar to ours, but just slightly different, because of one possibility that changed. I'll give you an example. Let's say we're driving down the road, and a cat runs out in front of the car. I swerve and hit that person's garage can. Now, in another reality, the cat never ran out in front of the car, and I didn't swerve, and that person didn't have to buy a new garbage can." "I get it," Patrick said with a smile. "Me too," Aiden said. "Okay, so I was thinking," Connor continued, a mischievous grin forming on his face. "What if our toilet was the gateway to the other universe, and every time you flush, you could go to another universe?" Although Kerry didn't approve of bathroom humor, and it wasn't appropriate at the table, Connor figured this was the perfect time to amuse his boys. He chuckled before he said, "So the people in the other universe all of a sudden see whatever you flush down the toilet raining down on them, and they'd be like, 'Whoa, where did that come from? Ew!'" The boys roared with laughter. Connor thought for a moment that Aiden might just wet his pants. They were both bright red in the face. Connor laughed slightly at his own joke and said, "Oh God, where's that coming from?" Everyone in the other universe must carry two things at all times, an umbrella and a mop. The boys laughed even louder. "They walk around with rain boots on," Patrick managed to say between hysterical laughter. "And goggles," Connor added as he turned into the road that went straight to Aiden and Patrick's school. They spent the next few moments in uncontrollable laughter. Connor's immature joke was irresistible for the two boys. "So, anything exciting happening in school today?" he asked them after the laughter died down a bit. "Nothing really," Patrick said. "I have that math test." "You'll do great. You studied last night. You'll be fine," Connor assured him. He looked at the back seat with the rearview mirror before putting it back in place to see the road behind him. He saw that Aiden had turned a bit serious. "And at recess, you remember, Aiden, you did nothing wrong. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And you go ahead and do the same thing today if you need to." Aiden nodded, but remained silent. "Any tests today for you, Aiden?" "No," Aiden said quietly. "All right then, just a relaxing day," Connor said as they approached the school. "I hope you both have wonderful days. Don't forget your umbrellas, just in case this universe happens to be the one on the other side of the toilet." They giggled hysterically as they pulled up to the front of the school, behind about 20 other cars with children getting out. Patrick got out first, as he usually did, and ran eagerly toward the school. Aiden looked at Connor after having unbuckled his seatbelt and moved forward a bit. Connor turned around and smiled at his son. "You'll do just fine, Aiden. Never feel ashamed for standing up for yourself. Don't look for a fight now. You never hit unless you're defending yourself." Aiden nodded obediently. "Okay, go to class. Have fun. See you at 1500. Aiden grinned and climbed out of the car. He ran toward the school, trying to catch up with Patrick. Connor smiled and pulled away. We'll read more tomorrow.